Then I was thinking grading policy. We should put that on there.
And I want to acknowledge our students, our student teachers who are joining us for the very first time. This is a historical moment. This is the commission's first time having college students in pre-service training join the Summer Institute. Please join me in welcoming them as well. I want to thank our hosts, Kane University. Soon you will hear from a couple of the individuals from the administration. But before that, I want to ask my A team to come up, and they know who they are. This is the central office team from the Amistad Commission. Please come up. Introducing Mr. Trevor Melton. You all met him upstairs. He's good at giving directions and getting people moving from A to B. Dr. John Mills, our project specialist, and also Andrea Baer, our education planner and Southern Regional Coordinator. I am missing Mackenzie. Where's Mackenzie's working? Mackenzie is our project specialist and event planner for the Amistad Commission. And so please join me in thanking all of them. Because of them, we are here with all of you today and able to put together a very robust program that I will touch on some points on. Now, the audience that we want to welcome the most, this is a record year for us. This is the first year where we had 457 participants register for the Amistad Commission Summer Institute, a record high number of participation. That's important for many reasons. One, it shows the interest that's growing across the state. Two, 61% of all the participants are first-time attendees. So congratulations for you making the decision to join us this morning and spending these 3 days with us. More importantly, I want to acknowledge that 39% of the people who are returning. Some of you have been at the Institute for more than 10 years, some of you for more than one, from 2, 3, but because of your commitment and your unwavering engagement with the commission, you have inspired other teachers to join. So thank you and continue to support us. We want you to continue to return every year. Our goal over the coming years is to reach a point where we have 500 to 1,000 teachers attending. Can we reach that? Yes, we can. Of importance is that this year, we have a record number of K through 5 teachers attending. We've never had K through 5 teachers. You are the biggest audience in this year's Summer Institute, followed by our middle school and followed by high school and middle schools. But what's important this year too is we have 42 administrators from on the school level, on the district level attending, and we're creating a special program just for them, as are we creating a special program for the 53 college students who are going to be here with us over the next 3 days. Collectively, you all represent 110 school districts and 230 schools in 20 of New Jersey's 21 counties. We should be proud, and I want to give ourselves a round of applause for that accomplishment. Our goals for the Institute, obviously, are to provide you with the right tools, the resources to do the important work that we are all passionate about, really to protect and preserve the narrative and contributions of African Americans in the K-12 curriculum across the state of New Jersey. I want to talk a little about opening speakers, and we first note that Dr. Hasan Jeffries is traveling from Ohio, from the University of Ohio. He is on his way, so let me make sure I note that. So it may be the point where we have to take a quick break after the other speakers come up and augment the program slightly to accommodate him as our opening speaker for this year. Our featured speaker tomorrow is Dr. Paul Ortiz, and over the next 3 days, we have created 40 different sessions for all of you, both for those who are attending online and in person, all unique for, and when you look at your program, and everybody has a copy of their program? Okay, I know some of you want printed copies, but I'm a paperless individual. If you must have a printed copy, if you must have a printed copy, if you must have a printed copy, I'll find a way for you to get one. If you must have a printed copy. We do have QR codes around the check-in table as well, where you can download it on your personal device along the way. But the sessions are designed for each particular cohort, from K through 3, from grades 4 to 5, from 6 to 8, and from 9 to 12. And you will find that repeats itself throughout the program that you have. Some important notes before I turn over and introduce Chair Edwards. Some things I need you to consider while you're attending the program. The first is feedback and collecting data from each of you helps us to improve this program each year. So as you experience each day and each component of the program, including this welcome right here, take notes, give us comments on what we could have done differently. After each meal, after each break, after each session you attend, comment on the presenter, the sessions, the information. We've tailored our program this year only because of the data we collected in 2023, 2024, and 2025. So I urge you to note that there's a link, a live link on the back of your electronic program that you can complete as you experience the Summer Institute. All meals and breaks are going to be upstairs where we were, and breaks are going to be all on this floor throughout the program. And most of your sessions will be located. I hope. Sorry, how embarrassing is that? And I should have been the one asking you to turn your cell phones off. And most of your meals will be in the top floor, and all your sessions will be on this floor in one of the adjacent rooms. If you have questions, visit the registration table. Most importantly, what we want you to do this year, as in any other year, enjoy each other, have a great experience. Make this worth your while. Some of you drove from Atlantic City. Some of you drove from the top of North Jersey. So I looked at every single school who's here. I pretty much know how many people from every school is registered. It's my job to kind of know that, so as I engage with you, I know where you're from and what your travels have been, and to understand the commitment and sacrifice you made to be here with your colleagues and with us. Take the opportunity to network, and please note that we do plan in 2-year cycles. Next year's dates are announced on the back of your program, and so is 2028. Next year is the commission's 25th anniversary. We're going to try to do it big, big, big. So plan for that, save the date, save it now so that we're not doing this last minute. Now I'd like to take the opportunity to ask our chair of the Board of Commissioners to share some remarks and to welcome all of you to the 2026 Summer Institute. Take my phone away.
I do have paper because I'm from the 20th century. Yeah. I love the 21st, but I defer to it. I don't claim it. Thank you all so very much for being here. And before we begin, I would like to say, as all of you know, that it takes a tremendous amount of work to put this together summer after summer after summer, and to make it bigger and better summer after summer after summer. So we should be applauding Dr. Lammy, the A-team, and the entire staff for all 3 days, and thank them. We thank them for doing this work on top of the other work they're also doing, including taking care of the commission itself. So thank you so very much. I am honored to welcome our esteemed educators and students and administrators who care for and nurture, mentor our children in the state of New Jersey. And so on behalf of the New Jersey Amistad Commission, it is my honor as chairperson, but also as a fellow educator, to welcome you to our Summer Institute, an annual gathering rooted in purpose, rooted in partnership, and rooted in the unwavering belief that education is a powerful instrument for justice. You are here because you understand that teaching African-American history is not an add-on to the curriculum. It is foundational to the American story. It is essential to how young people understand citizenship, how they understand democracy, and perhaps most importantly, how they understand their own place in the world. And it is central to the charge of the state of New Jersey that we do this work, knowing that this is a singular example of the depth of commitment to fulfilling that mission for the entire nation. We want to ensure that every student, every district receives a historically accurate, intellectually rigorous, and truth-centered education. This institute is designed for you. Sometimes I like to say, we work for you. We are servants of the state of New Jersey, servants of teachers in schools and school districts, and definitely servants of our children. This institute is designed for you. So over the next several days, you will engage with scholars, historians, master teachers, and community voices who bring depth, nuance, and lived experience to the study of African-American history and African-American life. You will explore new pedagogical approaches, examine primary sources, and strengthen your capacity to help students think critically about the past and its relationship to the present and its relationship to their future. I used to say to my Drew students, I used to say to them, you are creating history right now. Kind of, you are shaping not only your destiny, but you're shaping the destiny of institutions and communities and the nation. I know it's kind of heavy, but it was also my lead into you need to go vote, right? So it's not just about the past and present, it's also about their future. And perhaps more than anything today, I hope you feel affirmed. I like to think of us rolling out the red carpet for you because you deserve that and more. Your work matters. Your commitment to teaching honest history matters, and your willingness to grow, stretch, and refine your practice is what keeps New Jersey at the forefront of educational excellence and educational inclusion nationwide. The Amistad Commission was created to ensure that our state never loses sight of the truth that African American history is American history. And in doing so, we continue the legacy of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the founder of Negro History Week, now Black History Month, in 1926. Dr. Woodson cultivated research, he cultivated scholarship and publications and local and national conventions and K through 12 resources to tell the truth about the humanity of African people and the African diaspora. And so the commission celebrates, honors, applauds, and serves all of you who continue Dr. Woodson's legacy. You are the ones who bring that truth to life in the classrooms of New Jersey every day. And so we are grateful for your dedication and your expertise and your courage to teach an inclusive curriculum. And so I thank you for joining us. I thank you, public school teachers, for what you gave to my children who are now in their 30s and 40s and still grateful for that public school education in Montclair, New Jersey. And so I thank all of you on behalf of those teachers and my students. Thank you for showing up for your students. Thank you for being part of a community of educators who believe that knowledge can transform lives. We are honored to learn with you in this institute and in our work, and we look forward to the powerful work ahead under your leadership, your commitment, and your expertise. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, everyone. Come on, you can do better than that. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
If you haven't taken the time to do so, I would like for you to turn to your neighbor and say, it's good to see you. If that neighbor had a little bit of an attitude, turn to your other neighbor and say, it's good to see you. No, I know we don't have any attitudes today. I just wanted to see the smiles on your faces as I welcome you here to our beloved Kane University. I am Dr. David Jefferson, Jr., and I serve as the director for the Center for Africana Studies here at Kane. Let's give our hand to Kane University and all that they do. I am joined this morning by my Associate Director, Ali Salam, who is standing at my side as I bring greetings and remarks from our President, Dr. Lamont O. Repollet, who is our president, and also the leader, if you will, of the work that we do out of the Center for Africana Studies, Dr. Sancha Gray, who is the acting dean of the College of Education and the senior VP of Educational Entrepreneurial Initiatives here. It's my distinct honor and privilege to have you here and to welcome you at Kane University for your 2026 Amistad Commission Summer Institute. We are especially grateful for the leadership of Dr. Lammy. Let's put our hands together again for Doc. And no, when you see him today, we did not have a memo to wear the same colored suit. We just like blue, and I'm proud of his leadership because of his visionary leadership and his unwavering commitment to ensuring that the history of African Americans is not relegated to a single month here in our state, but is intricately woven, if you will, throughout the educational experiences of every student here in our state. The Amistad legislation reminds us that history is not merely about the past, it is about preparing informed citizens for the future. And so when we teach a fuller and more honest history, we strengthen what I believe is democracy itself. And as a professor of Africana Studies and African American Studies, I am encouraged to know that you all are informing the next generation. So when they set foot on this campus or any other campus throughout the world, out of the state of New Jersey, they are equipped and prepared to study Africana Studies and African American Studies at a higher level. Give yourselves a round of applause for that work. So there's going to be a number of presenters and facilitators, a number of educators and scholars who will be here and who will be speaking, but it is your presence as an educator that speaks volumes about your commitment. The theme of this year's Institute is quite telling: continuing the Amistad legacy, the revolution, the reaction, and reform. It certainly reminds us that history is not static. I think now more than ever, the world that we are living in, if we pause for a moment and look around, we need to appreciate all individuals and all stories that they represent. If we do not, we will have a world where human dignity is not respected. And so at the Center for Africana Studies here, our mission is to do exactly what you're doing and why you're here, to be informed and educated and equipped to teach young people. We seek to serve as a hub for scholarship, research, and community engagement, along with cultural excellence and experience. And so our goals are clear. We want to advance rigorous scholarship in Africana Studies. We want to support innovative teachings and curriculum development throughout the state and school districts. And we want to build partnerships with schools, cultural institutions, and communities. That's why the work that Dr. Lammy and the Amistad Commission are doing is so important, because you are building a global citizen. So as Dr. Carter G. Woodson does remind us, my fraternity brother, those who have no record, our fraternity. The brothers. Those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose what I believe is the inspiration which comes from teaching of biography and history. That means that our work together ensures that future generations inherit not only knowledge, but inspiration. So today is a day of good work. I know a lot of times we do work in our field, and I like to call it vocation work, not occupation work. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. Occupation work, you have to get up, you have to go. Vocation work, you're called. Where my called folk at today? I see some called folk over here. I know this is my frozen chosen, but we're called. So welcome to Kane University. Have a wonderful conference. Welcome to this wonderful 2026 Amistad Commission Summer Institute. Thank you for being here, and have a wonderful couple of days. Thank you.
Good morning. Buenos dias. Hola, bonjour, shalom, assalamu alaikum, educators, aspiring educators, administrators. We are here at Kane University. We want to make sure that we do say it correctly. Am I saying, all right, let me hear everyone say Kane. Yes, we are here for the Amistad Commission of New Jersey 2026. And again, shouting out our aspiring educators. Welcome. We're excited to have you. I have the privilege to introduce Mary Bennett, a visionary leader of the New Jersey State Board of Education, whose career is defined by an unwavering commitment to educational excellence and equity, with a profound understanding of the transformative power of learning. That's what we do. Mary has dedicated herself to championing policies that support educators, empower families, and ensure every single student across our diverse state, which is number one in the nation, hello, has the resources to thrive. Please welcome a true advocate for the future of New Jersey's youth, Mary Bennett.
Good morning. Is there anyone in the audience who's a graduate of Malcolm X Shabazz High School, taught at Malcolm X Shabazz High School, worked in Newark, New Jersey? All right now, I'm home. I'm home. Good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm here on behalf of Commissioner Lily Lux, our new commissioner, our State Board President, Kathy Goldenberg, and my fellow State Board members of the New Jersey State Board of Education. It's an honor for me to serve on behalf of 1.4 million students across this state in over 600 districts of all creeds, colors, and kinds. It's our young people, and I represent them as best I can. And I'm happy to say that it's nice to be in the room at the table with a voice. And that's how I choose to serve. I would like to thank Dr. Lammy for inviting me. I'd like to thank the Board of Commissioners. I'd like to thank Reverend DJ. See, that's how I know him. The Amistad work is work that is so important and so powerful. And I'm ecstatic about the pre-service teachers here because you're coming into a profession that I have served in. Come September 2nd, will be 52 years. The work that educators do is priceless because we are shaping young minds. We are encouraging young minds. We're telling them, don't let AI think for you, think for yourself. Use that muscle. Don't let doing what's quick and easy, Google, lead you to something that somebody else put there. We need to keep Amistad alive and well more now than ever before. We are living in challenging times. And in these challenging times, when we look at the Amistad history, those people did not give up, did not surrender, did not turn their backs on their homeland, and were determined to get back home. We need to understand that everybody, everywhere, no matter where they came from, should be honored and respected because we are all human beings. All human beings. I'm a lover of good sci-fi, and I liked Mr. Spock. But guess what? I knew that blood was not real. That green blood, no. When we cut ourselves, we're all going to bleed red blood. And we all need to be able to take our hand and reach out to another person, no matter where they came from, no matter what their original background was. When we as human beings band together, we can accomplish great things. The Amistad story tells us that. And I am so thankful that this institute continues to provide tools and resources for teachers to take into the classroom, because no matter what your discipline, what your content, you are teaching character education. You are teaching young people to think, and in your classroom, you create a community that represents how people work together. So over the next 3 days, please enjoy your institute, have a wonderful experience, and please go forward and continue to conquer those things that are negative and help our young people find a way to the positive and to one another. Have a great day.
before we go into a very brief video from our Lieutenant Governor to welcome all of you, I want to acknowledge a couple of people in the room. They are sitting too far back. My boss, Assistant Commissioner Curlin Espinal, please stand up. And right behind her, Assistant Commissioner Ambrose Duckett. Oh, he moved up. I just want to thank you all for both being here, because our office is a busy office and we put them to a lot to be supportive. And this institute took about 40 different procurements to pull off. And we asked AC Duckett to sign 40 different documents at the last hour, and he was very supportive and making sure that we have what we need for this to happen. So thank you both for being here, and thank you for your support. Now, if you can cue up the video from the Lieutenant Governor, that'd be great. Then we're going to introduce our featured speaker. Thank you, Dr. Hasan Jeffries, for being here, for traveling from University of Ohio, for joining us. They'll be introduced next after this brief video. Thank you.
For the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you today. As New Jersey's Secretary of State and as an educator, I wish I could be with you in person to celebrate the importance of the work you do every day, and especially your commitment to sharing the Amistad curriculum with your students. Black history is American history. It's our shared history. At the Department of State, I oversee many programs that foster cultural enrichment for all ages with an emphasis on the wonderful diversity of our state. The New Jersey Historical Commission, for example, is instrumental in providing opportunities for people to explore our past through programs like the Black Heritage Trail, which connects people with important landmarks and with the stories of remarkable Black New Jerseyans whose contributions shaped our state. As educators, you are in a unique position to support progress in New Jersey, ensuring that our young people experience an environment that is inclusive and welcoming to all, and that recognizes the value of all our cultural backgrounds, especially those that have historically been overlooked, dismissed, or denigrated. The history of Black people in America is full of essential American stories, and we must tell it all, the tragedy and the triumphs. I commend you for your determination to present the African American story with honesty and openness, celebrating the accomplishments of exceptional Black individuals and communities, while also confronting the hardships. The Department of State is incredibly proud to partner with the Amistad Commission and support this work through programs and grants. You are among the leading champions of New Jersey history, lifting up the Historical Commission's fundamental belief that understanding our shared heritage is essential to sustaining a cohesive and robust democracy. Your participation here today speaks volumes about your commitment to students. You inspire curiosity, you foster understanding, you create an environment in which every student can feel a sense of pride and can be open to the world that waits for them in this wonderful state of New Jersey.
And this is what I get for removing the mouse. Thank you. And again, for our Lieutenant Governor, may I have my mouse? Because I am introducing our speaker. Yes, and here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, all of those that are online and present, we are here again. There we go. And so it is an absolute honor to introduce a visionary educator, renowned historian, and dedicated public scholar, Dr. Hasan Kwame Jeffries. Dr. Jeffries is an associate professor of history at The Ohio State University, where he illuminates the powerful stories of the civil rights and Black Power movements. Born in Brooklyn, New York, his path of academic excellence began at Morehouse College, graduating, I hear the Morehouse in the house, summa cum laude, before earning his PhD in American history from Duke University. But Dr. Jeffries' work stretches far beyond the walls of the traditional classroom. He served as the lead historian and primary script writer for the $27 million renovation of the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel. He hosts the podcast, Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Anyone has seen that? Want to make sure, oh, I see the hands are up. Yes, we want to check on that. Definitely look at that. And authored the acclaimed book, Bloody Lounge, and was featured in the Emmy-nominated PBS documentary, Black America Since MLK. Whether taking students on immersive explorations of history or sharing insights through media and lectures across the country, Dr. Jeffrey's work tirelessly to ensure we understand our past so that we can better navigate our present. Please join me in giving a warm, enthusiastic welcome to a pioneer, a scholar, and dynamic leader, Dr. Hasan Kwame Jeffrey.
I'm excited to hear what I got to say now. Thank you very much for that warm and energetic and enthusiastic introduction. Thank you to the Amistad Commission, to Dr. Lamy for extending the invitation to be here with you all. And thank you, of course, to all the teachers, the pre-service teachers, administrators, curriculum specialists, librarians, public historians, community partners for spending these summer days doing this work. I'm grateful to be here because teaching African American history is as important today as it has ever been. And I'm humbled because you are the ones translating a legislative mandate into classroom experiences, while at the same time shouldering ordinary demands of education and the extraordinary burdens of this particular moment. And I'm especially glad to be here because New Jersey is partly home to me. As was mentioned, I was born and raised on the other side of the Hudson River in Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn is always in the house, right? But my family roots run deep in northern New Jersey. My father and my uncle, his brother, were born and raised in Newark, graduated from Barringer High School. My grandmother lived in Montclair. I have family still in Teaneck and Inglewood, Newark, and the Oranges. And when we grew up, my brother and I, during the summers, they would send us to New Jersey, and we would pack a bag for a week or 2 weeks during the summer. Our friends were going down to Carolina and Georgia, and we thought we were going someplace. We weren't going nowhere but across the GW. But it was big, and I used to call home because this is pre-cell phone, y'all, pre-service teachers. You had to pay for a long-distance call across the George Washington Bridge. And I remember we get that one call back home, and we call our parents, and I call my mom, and I feel bad because I felt my mom missed us. And it wasn't until I was older, and I was like, oh no, she was sending us away. She was enjoying her time. So this is truly a homecoming of sorts, and it's always good to be back home. But I have not come home, if you will, just to reminisce. I've come home, I've come here to join you at a moment of crisis and a moment of possibility. We are meeting at a pivotal time for public education, for historical truth, and for American democracy. The freedom to learn and the freedom to teach are being narrowed. African American history is being attacked by people who understand exactly how powerful this history becomes when it is taught honestly. This morning, I have titled my remarks, Teaching Hard History in an Age of Erasure, the Amistad Charge. Teaching Hard History in an Age of Erasure, the Amistad Charge. I chose that title because it names both the danger before us and the responsibility New Jersey has placed in your hands. We are here this morning because New Jersey has done something exceptional, extraordinary, and exceedingly rare. It has placed the obligation to teach African American history into law. That obligation is the center point of this gathering and the starting point for everything I want to say this morning. The Amistad legislation declares that the legacy of slavery has pervaded the fabric of our society, no lies detected. It identifies the African slave trade, slavery, its vestiges, the struggle for freedom, and African American contributions as the proper concern of every student. It says every board of education shall incorporate this history into curriculum. The commission expresses that responsibility in language that is equally clear and demanding to embed the full, authentic story of African Americans across all curricular areas, not only history and social studies, but throughout the K-12 learning experience. Full, authentic, across, throughout. Each word carries a distinct and powerful obligation. Full means African American history cannot be confined to a few extraordinary people, a couple famous speeches, holidays, or the shortest month of the year. It means teaching the systems that constrained African American life and the people who resisted those systems, built institutions, created culture, and transformed this nation. Authentic. Authentic means teaching evidence rather than mythology. Scholarship rather than political convenience. An honest interpretation rather than comforting invention. Complexity cannot become an excuse for confusion, and context cannot become an alibi for injustice. Across. Across means this work does not belong only to history or social studies. African American history lives wherever students learn how human beings have understood and changed the world. And throughout. Throughout means this cannot be done in one unit only. It must be coherent from kindergarten through 12th grade. Our youngest learners deserve truth framed with care. Our oldest learners deserve depth and complexity. No student should encounter fragments for 12 years and graduate without understanding how they fit together. This is not a suggestion. This is not an elective commitment. This is a mandate. Embedding the charge in law makes African American history harder to ignore and to erase. Somebody knew what they were doing. The law gives teachers authority. It gives districts, administrators, curriculum leaders, and the commission responsibility. The mandate is a shield for educators who teach truthfully and a standard by which implementation must be judged. But the law itself does not change what a child experiences in the classroom. Teachers make the mandate visible. Teachers make the mandate meaningful. The law settled whether New Jersey has made a commitment it has. The question before us now is whether that commitment will become the lived educational experience of every New Jersey student. So to answer that question, we have to understand what African American history reveals about the nation and why teaching it truthfully produces such fierce opposition. I coined the term hard history to describe narratives that challenge national identity. Hard histories contradict cherished stories. They complicate cherished people and expose the distance, the gulf between American principles and American practices. Hard history is not simply sad or violent history. It disrupts stories of who we are and exposes the choices that produced inequality. The literary performer Reggie Gibson captures the problem perfectly. He observed that we as Americans, we hate history. And when I heard him say that, I got a little nervous because I teach history. I said, you can't be talking about we hate history, but then he clarified. He said, we as Americans, we hate history. He said, what we love is nostalgia. We love nostalgia. We love stories about the past that make us feel comfortable in the present. History and nostalgia are not the same. Nostalgia selects what comforts us. History follows the evidence. Nostalgia protects heroes from scrutiny. History takes them seriously enough to examine the choices that they made. Nostalgia remembers progress and forgets resistance. History studies both. Nostalgia has its place, but it is dangerous to teach the nation's past through nostalgia. When nostalgia acquires the power of government, it becomes a public policy of forgetting. That is the force of authenticity in the Amistad Mandate. It requires history rather than nostalgia. Consider the name Amistad itself. As was mentioned earlier, the Africans aboard the Amistad were not simply cargo or passive victims waiting for benevolent Americans to discover their humanity. They knew themselves to be free people who have been kidnapped and unlawfully held. And they acted collectively, seized the ship, asserted their freedom, and entered a transatlantic legal and political struggle that they forced. That fuller account models how we should teach African American history. Instead of treating African Americans only as people acted upon, we ask how they understood their circumstances. How did they define freedom? What did they demand? What did they create? What did they change? Those questions raised by the actions the Africans aboard the Amistad open a window onto the nation itself. African American history, taught fully, taught honestly, provides one of the clearest views of the American journey. It shows how law and power have limited freedom, how people denied freedom have struggled to expand it, why change has been contested, and what democracy has required of those forced to fight for its promises. That is why African American history cannot be treated as a separate chapter. It runs through the entire American story. Teaching the founding of this nation honestly requires us to hold liberty and slavery together. Teaching Reconstruction honestly requires us to examine the democratic institutions that African Americans built and how white supremacists worked to undermine them through violence and terror with Northern indifference. Teaching the civil rights movement honestly requires us to move beyond triumphant images and notions of inevitable progress to organizing, to studying conflict, to studying sacrifice and opposition, and the work that remains unfinished. Teaching African American history is not an attack on America. It is a way of seeing America clearly, how democracy has worked for some and how it has worked against others, how racial injustice is made to seem natural, and how African Americans have pushed the nation closer to its professed ideals. Portraying the past as perfect only teaches students how national myths are made. African American history teaches students how America was made and remade and remade. And that is precisely why this history is under attack. And the principal point of attack is the White House. I don't know if y'all heard me. From the moment Donald Trump returned to office, his administration has gone after the people and institutions that research, preserve, interpret, and teach the past honestly. African American history has been the principal target because it makes national innocence impossible to maintain. So let me be clear. This administration has embraced white supremacy as a governing project. And by white supremacy, I do not only mean open declarations of racial hatred. They're doing that too. I mean a politics that protects unequal power, denies the systems that created unequal power, and uses public authority to punish those who teach people how to recognize it. Someone called Donald Trump one time the Grand Wizard of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue as a reference to him being connected to the Klan. Now, I don't know. Donald Trump is connected to the Klan, but he may not be a card-carrying member of that organization, but somebody should check his wallet. Just 9 days after taking office, Donald Trump issued an order accusing schools of radical indoctrination. It defined, this executive order, patriotic education as, quote, inspiring and ennobling, history that celebrates American greatness. It threatened federal support for education and teacher training associated with what it calls, quote, discriminatory equity ideology. 2 months later, the White House turned directly towards museums and historic sites. It accused the Smithsonian, headed by an African-American, Secretary Lonnie Bunch, of promoting a divisive, race-centered ideology, and ordered that federal historical interpretation be purged of ideas that supposedly disparaged Americans. And just a few days ago, on July 4th, the White House released a 162-page report accusing the National Museum of American History of ideological capture and extreme political activism. But its real complaint was not that the Smithsonian had falsified history. Its real complaint was that the Smithsonian refused to turn history into patriotic mythology. This is not disagreement over historical interpretation, which would be fine. This is disagreement over what is essential to historical inquiry. This is the abuse of presidential power, the abuse of federal agencies, the abuse of public funding to discredit professional knowledge, to intimidate historians and educators, and to make honest history suspect. This is an effort to make nostalgia official. The attack on the Smithsonian is one front in the same project we see in attacks on African American studies, on campaigns, or as a part of campaigns to remove books from libraries, restrictions placed on teachers, efforts to sanitize the stories told at historic sites, and efforts to turn complicated people into uncomplicated patriotic symbols. Across these attacks, the strategy follows the same deliberate sequence. Discredit the people who teach the history. Restrict the evidence they can use, and then replace the history itself with a celebratory narrative in which racial justice becomes incidental, African American resistance disappears, and the nation is always innocent. Consider what this strategy does to George Washington. I just returned from teaching at the George Washington Teacher Institute at Mount Vernon, where they're doing wonderful work exploring the life and times of not only George Washington, but of the enslaved folk who made Washington's life possible. It is true that Washington surrendered his military commission and later stepped away from the presidency, establishing important precedents essential to a Republican government. But it is also true that he enslaved 300 people and never freed a single soul during his lifetime. His will granted immediate freedom to only one person, William Lee, and postponed freedom for the other people Washington legally owned until his wife Martha's death. And he did not free any of the people held by his wife Martha's estate. The same man who relinquished extraordinary political power refused while he was alive to relinquish the power slavery gave him over other human beings. Erasing either truth replaces history with mythology. Now, some people will say the reason why this history becomes so challenging is it becomes so deeply personal. people's identities are wrapped up in these historical narratives. You say something about George Washington, suddenly they feel you're saying something about them. Like, I didn't know y'all were related. And people are running around pretending that George Washington and the founders, the framers of the Constitution, were secretly abolitionists. The Constitution was a pro-slavery document. If these guys were abolitionists, then they were the worst goddamn abolitionists that ever lived. When you reframe a Washington, when you talk about him being a reluctant enslaver, someone who could have walked away from slavery but did not have the courage to do that. And then they say, well, no, he put it in his will that upon his death, those he had enslaved would be free. And they said, well, what about the folk who were in his wife's will, or his wife's estate, who he inherited when he came? It's like, well, he didn't have the legal grounds to do that. I was like, we talking about the same dude who just led a revolution against Great Britain? They're like, well, yeah, it's different. I was like, okay, so now he's a radical feminist because he didn't want to tread on what was legally Martha's. You're making excuses because he didn't have the courage to do what he knew was the morally right thing to do. This is how historical amnesia is manufactured. Events don't have to be denied outright. Their meaning can be minimized, their causes obscured, and their consequences disconnected from the present. Folk are willing to admit that Washington held people in bondage. It's just not central to his story. Washington, like Jefferson, like Madison, enslaving hundreds of people, they were surrounded by Black folk. They spent their whole lives in Black neighborhoods. You cannot tell the story of these founders and framers without understanding the Black world in which they lived and tried to exert influence and power over. The past is made more comfortable, so the present will be held less accountable. To understand how we arrived at this particular point, we need to remember what happened just a few summers ago in 2020. After police in Minneapolis murdered George Floyd, millions took to the streets in the largest protest mobilization in American history. We don't talk about it. We just lived through, everyone in this room, as adults, lived through the largest protest in American history. It's not even close. And we don't talk about it. Black people were at the center of that protest, joined by people across race, age, and geography, trying to understand not only one murder, but the system that made that murder possible. And for a moment, systemic racism entered into ordinary conversation. People discussed policing, housing, health, schools, wealth, voting as institutions shaped by that history. I mean, that was just yesterday. We were having that conversation. Now, Black folk always knew that systemic racism was a problem. We got off the Virginia in 1619 in chains. We were like, this system don't look like it's gonna work for us. But white folk were catching up. Something powerful was happening. Little white boys and little white girls, Kylie, because it's always Kylie, learned that racism was not only individual prejudice or personal meanness. They had learned that laws and policies, institutions, and accumulated advantages could produce inequality even when no one announced a racist intention. They had been learning the things that we have been teaching about America. And they spoke out. They knew what they were witnessing was wrong, and they asked, why is this still happening? What do we have to do to change? But for people who were committed to preserving the existing order because they benefit from it, those questions were terrifying. They saw what happens when African American history, taught honestly, reaches young people. Students recognize patterns. They connect past policy to present inequality, and they discover that systems can, in fact, be changed. The backlash to that was not only against the protests, it was also against the knowledge that made the protests possible. The knowledge that the history that enabled young people to see George Floyd's murder not as an isolated tragedy, but as a part of a structure. And those who benefited from that structure needed to discredit the demand for change. So they discredited the people making the demand. They told parents, your children do not believe systemic racism exists because evidence persuaded them. They believe it because a teacher indoctrinated them. They're not questioning injustice because they learned history factually. They're repeating woke ideology. Their demand for change should be ignored because education had poisoned their minds. That is the function of the charge of indoctrination. It is not designed to protect students from being told what to think. It is designed to prevent them from learning enough to think for themselves. This campaign relies on lies. We need to call those lies out. It is a lie that systemic racism isn't real. It is a lie that this history is designed to shame white children. Students are not responsible for the history they inherit, but they will be responsible for what they do with the world that history created. And it's a lie that teaching African American history truthfully is indoctrination. Inquiry asks students to examine evidence, trace causation, compare interpretations, and construct arguments. The opposite of indoctrination is not silence, it is inquiry. These people do not fear that children will feel bad. They fear that they will begin to see clearly, that Black children will recognize the power of the freedom struggle, that white children will recognize injustice and refuse to be silent, and that all young people will say, this is wrong, we need to change it. That is why the attack is so fierce. And that is why the Amistad mandate is so important in this moment. At the very moment, at the very time that the federal government is using public power to narrow the American story, New Jersey law requires that you widen it. The White House is demanding a history that comforts. The Amistad legislation demands the full, authentic story of African Americans across the curriculum and throughout the K-12 learning experience. The federal government is using public power to enforce historical amnesia. New Jersey is using public power to require knowledge. That conflict gives this institute, the next 3 days, special urgency. The Amistad mandate gives New Jersey educators, gives you all both protection and direction. tells you what this moment requires. To teach the story fully, to teach oppression as a system and not merely a collection of cruel acts. To refuse to turn African American history into an endless catalog of suffering. To teach resistance with the same specificity that we teach oppression. To teach African Americans as people who interpreted their world, who built institutions, who created beauty and joy and changed the meaning of freedom in America. A mandate to teach the story authentically, to begin with evidence, to distinguish between a claim and proof, memory and history, interpretation and denial. Do not soften slavery into involuntary relocation. Do not turn segregation into a misunderstanding or present racial inequality as an accident without any authors, without any beneficiaries, or without any opponents. Evidence is not controversial merely because the truth that it reveals makes you uncomfortable. The mandate. Teach history across the curriculum. African American history is not the property of one department. Literature opens questions of voice and power. Art and music reveal creation, protest, and joy. Civics traces citizenship. Science confronts scientific racism and ethics and eugenics and African American achievement. Mathematics helps students interpret data without reducing people to numbers. That is what across the curriculum requires. And teaching the story throughout K through 12. Horizontal integration and vertical integration. Can't wait till February. Can't wait for an anniversary. Can't wait for a national tragedy. Build knowledge deliberately and revisit essential questions at increasing levels of complexity. A kindergartner and a senior will not study the same material in the same way, but both are capable of learning truthful history. We're told to be cautious about making students uncomfortable. But there's a difference between being uncomfortable and being unsafe. Uncomfortable is where the good learning happens. When you're forced to question something that you held dear. That doesn't mean that you are unsafe. That means that you're thinking. You may come out on the other end, believing more deeply in the beliefs that you held. That's fine. But they need to be questioned. They need to be challenged. The mandate also guides us to make history local. African American history happened in Newark and Camden, Atlantic City and Montclair, the rural communities, industrial cities, suburbs, neighborhoods, schools, and workplaces. The national story is present beneath the feet of your students. And once we are clear about what this work demands, we have to be equally clear about what it means when we fail to do it. Refusing to teach African American history accurately and fully is educational malpractice. It's instructional malpractice to reduce slavery to a footnote, to reduce enslaved people to victims, to reduce African American history to a few heroes and a couple of holidays. It is malpractice to teach Reconstruction without the democratic institutions African Americans built or the terror that was used to defeat them. It is malpractice to teach the civil rights movement as inevitable national redemption. If what you are doing is giving students fragments and calling those fragments the full story, then you are doing more harm than good. And it is institutional malpractice to mandate this work without providing training, resources, planning time, and protection. To praise teacher courage, and abandon teachers when controversy arrives is malpractice. To measure success by links posted and assemblies held rather than by what students actually learn is malpractice. A mandate without implementation is a promise unkept. Compliance is not implementation. A Black History Month program or unused resource page is not implementation. When the state requires full and authentic history, persistent omission and distortion are not harmless oversights. They are failures of educational responsibility. They are educational malpractice. The Amistad charge also isn't just curricular. The charge is democratic. Democracy depends on the public's ability to recognize how power operates. People cannot govern systems they have not been taught to see. When teachers teach African American history accurately, they help students see how democracy was constructed and how it changes. They reveal how power sustained racial inequality, how African Americans resisted oppression and built institutions, how their struggles expanded freedom, defined citizenship. Somebody needs to tell Clarence Thomas that. That's what it means to be an architect of democracy. At a moment when our democratic institutions are crumbling and collapsing around us, an opportunity is created to build something more democratic, something this nation has never seen. And the architects of that will be you as educators, instilling in our students a knowledge of what democracy was and what democracy can be. Through African American history, teachers show students that inequality was created by human choices and not natural forces, that institutions made by people can be remade, and that democracy is not a safe inheritance. It is a practice. It is a struggle. It is a lived process, and it's a responsibility. That's why teachers of African American history are attacked. Those hostile to multiracial democracy understand that if you erase this history, you erase not only injustice, but resistance. The evidence that ordinary people can confront power and change the nation. But teachers alone cannot fulfill the Amistad mandate through courage alone. The legislation gives the state a charge. The commission gives the work a center. Institutions must give educators the support to carry it out. We can't celebrate teachers for being courageous and then leave them standing alone. Courage ain't a curriculum. Exhaustion is not an infrastructure. No teacher can embed the full authentic story of African American history across the curriculum by themselves as well. The commission, the state, school districts, universities, museums, community partners must provide a coherent curricular shape, vet sources, provide local history, offer professional learning, collaborate, plan, and provide visible support. Visible support. This is the time for visible support. New Jersey has some 1.3 million public school students. 1.3 million. That is the potential reach of the Amistad legislation. Young people who should encounter African American history not by accident, not only during February, and not only when one teacher takes a risk. They should encounter it as an essential part of their education. That's the law, and that's a moral responsibility. This institute offers opportunities. The next 3 days offer opportunities to identify gaps in the curriculums that you work with, to build relationships, to create curricular connections, to share materials, to prepare for the pressure that is out there. Make the full, authentic story of African Americans a sustained reality in every single district, in every single discipline, and in every classroom. That's what the next 3 days are about building. At this moment, others are using public power to narrow the story. But New Jersey has placed another power in your hands. You have a law that requires teaching African American history. You have a commission charged with helping you make that law real. And you also have one another. Teachers elsewhere in our country are being told they cannot do what New Jersey requires. You can model what happens when a state refuses to retreat from hard history, when institutions stand with educators, and when a mandate actually reaches the classroom. But don't confuse having a law with fulfilling a law. A mandate can easily be reduced to paperwork. It can easily be honored ceremoniously. It can be easily violated educationally. So make this law real. Use it to correct what has been distorted. Use it to restore what has been erased. Use it to connect what is too often fragmented. Use it to protect teachers who refuse to substitute nostalgia for history. When others deny systemic racism, teach your students how systems actually work. When others erase African American resistance, restore the record of the struggle. When others reduce African Americans to victims, teach the fullness of Black life. When others turn history into mythology, follow the evidence. When others attack teachers, build the structures that allow teachers to stand. Teach the full story. Teach it authentically. Teach it across the curriculum. Teach it throughout the K through 12 experience. More than 1.3 million New Jersey students are waiting for you to do that. They're not too fragile for the truth They're not too fragile for the truth, but they are too important for the lies. The stakes have never been higher, but the opportunity is present and powerful. The students are waiting for us. So let's get to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffries. Let's get to work. Are we ready to get to work? Are we ready to get to work? Yes. At this time, educators and distinguished guests, we have 2 microphones. And again, Dr. Jeffries, we thank you so very much. We're going to have a Q&A. And so myself, and of course you see
Mel.
There you go, Mel. I wanted to make sure the mic works. The mic works. Myself and Mel have the mic, so we will come to you for a quick Q&A. You have a question, please stand up and we will bring the mic to you. I have a question right here.
Good morning. My name is Naji Lorick. Forgive me. My name is Yasnea Lorick. I am a first grade teacher at Atlantic City. And my question is this: while in my building, I have a wonderful support principal, the curriculum doesn't align. And last year, I was blessed to be able to use AI to help me so that I can pursue what I learned in last year's and in prior years, creating reading material for my students so that it can be not just vertical, but horizontal.
Yes.
How can, if you look in my district, you will see that it says Amistad on it. You know, you go right in and it gives you, and then it gives you information. But the reality is that in my building, I'm the only one that is implementing it in the way that is cross subject.
Yeah.
How can I, or what can be done so that the district doesn't just put it in
On paper.
Right, but that it really gives us the tools that we need and helps us move it forward?
Yeah. And that's a wonderful question. And I'm sure perhaps by a show of hands, how many people have a similar situation and circumstance. So the first thing to recognize is that you're not alone. And so this isn't a personal problem. This isn't just a building problem. This is an organizing problem. In other words, we have to see the ways in which teachers, connected with the Amistad Commission, connected with those who are in support to implement the law, can actually compel, can actually demand that districts be in compliance. It shouldn't just be up to a brave teacher who understands that this is important. I understand it falls on your shoulders because you're trying to do the work, but we also have to think at the same time, and this is totally unfair. Like, you shouldn't have to do this extra work, but it's also the reality of the situation and the circumstance. So at the same time as you're doing the work to give your students what they need, you also need to be thinking about, well, who else in the building understands the shortcoming? Who are my allies? Who do I know at the district headquarters who actually wants to see this implemented? They just don't know what's happening in the classroom and in the school. Now, you'll encounter some people who are openly hostile, but this ain't Alabama. Sometimes it pretends to be, but this ain't Alabama. So you're also going to find some people who have a little bit more wiggle room. They just don't know what's happening or know what needs to be done. So that's why I say it's an organizing problem. We have to look at this strategic and say, okay, how can we organize among teachers, among allies, bring in parents? Some of the best allies you could possibly have are parents. One thing I learned engaging in public education work is that folk in administrative offices get real bold when there ain't no parents around. But suddenly when parents start asking questions and start demanding things, then suddenly action happens. So part of the organizing, part of the allyship is to reach out to parents. One of the things that we have to do, those of us who are committed to teaching this history accurately, is not be afraid of parents. In fact, we need to be reaching out, letting them know what it is that we're doing in the classroom in advance. Because we're not doing anything that we need to hide. We're not making anything up. And so bring them in, because they are a powerful constituency. Now, not everybody, I'll say this last thing, not everybody's going to be on board. Not everybody's going to rush to your side and say, yes, we must do that, but you don't need everybody. One of the most important lessons to come out of the civil rights movement, the civil rights era, is that it doesn't take a lot of people to make a big difference. So you don't need a lot of people, but you do need some people. So begin to think and strategize. Who can I get on board? Who can I partner with? What parents don't know what's happening but want more? And then have those conversations and discussions and see how you can leverage that to make demands on building administrators, but then also on the district. And again, it's the law. Like, how many states can say that? As long as you got it on the law, that's a tool that you can leverage.
I'm answering the question that was just posed to Dr. Jeffries as chair of the commission. You have just defined the commission's work, right? We are your front line. You are not the front line, right? And so what the commission needs to know from you, I mean, call the commission, right? We work for you. Again, we work for you. We are your servants. And so call the commission and everyone who raised your hand and let us know the issues within your specific school or your district, because it is the commission's responsibility to work with school boards, to work with superintendents, and to work with individual schools to ensure, number one, they know what they're supposed to do, which is why you see that very detailed new legislation that was just passed in 2021. And then also, as Dr. Jeffries has said, how to do it. Because people will say, we don't know. You know, it'll be the, right, we don't know what to do. But we have all of those resources available to work directly with the decision makers, and then also with you as the experts in the classroom. Don't think you're in a battle by yourself, and don't even think that you're leading it either, right? That we are empowered to do that, and we will do that work. I will give you my personal information and phone number if you have any issues at all in getting this work done. It's important. Now I will defer to my boss over here to let Mel.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffries. Tremendous phrasing, some just wonderful in there. And in particular, some great ideas about organizing. My name is Christopher Henry. I'm a teacher in Clifton High School. You gave a wonderful series of steps about discrediting educators first.
Yeah.
And then you had a next step, which I missed. And then you had a third step, replace history with nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me the second one? Because I think it would just be a fantastic thing to put in my room.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll reconnect, and I can make the whole text of the speech available.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. That would be great. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Gene Woods. I teach in Bayonne High School. I actually had the pleasure of meeting you and talking to you a few years ago at a Facing History event.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
But what's on my mind is I have a question. I've been in the profession for 20 years, but I'm thinking about our pre-service teachers here, but also anyone who wants to continue to learn.
Yeah.
What is one book, and I know
Oh.
not one book could cover everything, but is one book that you would recommend that everybody in this space read to help continue to do the work here with the mandate?
Hmm. That's the answer is there isn't one book. I think one of the ways to enter into this work, and I'm not trying to be dismissive, one of the ways to enter into this, the reason why there's not one book, because our areas of interest differ. And I'm not talking about, well, I'm a science teacher and I'm a social studies teacher, just our passions. We're all educators. Our passions are different. So one of the best ways to enter into this work is to enter into it through your area of passion. So in other words, for some folk, they're trying to understand, okay, well, what are the ideologies that have made teaching hard history so challenging? And so if someone's interested in sort of the intellectual origins of this and sort of how white supremacy has unfolded, then Ibram Kendi's Stamped from the Beginning is an excellent place to begin. But others may be like, no, I'm clear on the white supremacy stuff. I want to know how teachers have been able to sort of fight against this over the years. And then we have the brother who was teaching at Harvard, Jarvis Givens, exactly. Wait a minute, I know that voice. Is that Charles Payne back there? See, I'm getting a little, now see, now we got, I didn't know Dr. Payne. Have you been here the whole time? Now, Dr. Charles Payne, author of I Got a Light of Freedom. I got a chance to study with him. See, y'all gonna make me emotional up in here. When I was a graduate student at Duke University, more than 25 years ago, my career as a professional historian owes everything to the scholarship that he laid out. So to the pre-service teachers, as you enter into this work, you got to find yourselves the Charles Paynes, the people who have been doing this, who are willing to take some time to sit down and talk to you, to tell you what you're doing right, and also to tell you what the hell you're doing wrong. When you write a sentence that makes no sense, when you're not committed to the work, when you think it's just academic, and you don't see the bigger picture. You got to have the people like Dr. Charles Payne. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to say your speech was prolific, and I really understood exactly what you meant by fighting and making our lessons understandable to students.
Yeah.
But I wanted to encourage, my name is Shannon Martin and I teach in Atlantic City also. And I wanted to encourage the young lady that stepped up and said that she didn't have anything to teach her students, or, she was trying to find it on ChatGPT. I too felt that way. So I took a novel that our school district gave us, The Narrative of Frederick Douglass, and I aligned that with the Amistad curriculum, and we created the Frederick Douglass trial. And I felt like the project-based learning, I got more from the students and their understanding than I actually would have done if I taught them paper, pencil. When they became an active participant in the trial, they became ownership of not only the Amistad curriculum, but our African-American history in general. So I wanted to encourage her, but I would like to ask the Amistad curriculum is that if we could have a hub or a place where we could go to find project-based learning for teachers, it would be great.
Yeah, no, project-based learning is so powerful because you're empowering students to take the lead in their education and their learning. I've been working with a number of public schools and independent schools in Western Connecticut. If you get a chance, if you Google the Troutbeck Symposium, and it does very much that. It's not just saying, oh, we're gonna teach through projects, but we're gonna teach through projects about hard history, about difficult subjects. Amenia, Troutbeck is located in Amenia, New York. In Amenia, you had the NAACP Amenia conferences, W.E.B. Du Bois going up there, 1917 and early 1930s. And so they've embraced this idea of how can we not just teach students history, but how can we train student historians? And when you do that, the stories take on new meaning. And to see these young scholars get excited about their discoveries, and that opens up a window into a whole nother level of education. And we talk so much, I'll wrap up, we talk so much about, well, our students, they don't have the attention span, this, that, and the other. They don't have the attention span for the bullshit you teaching. But when you dig deep and you help them get excited and they're making the connections about their lived experience, then they want to learn more. And then you can't turn them off. That's also the power of African-American history and the Black experience and what the Amistad Commission is asking you to do. They're telling you, we know what works. You get these students engaged in this history and it just opens up. And again, to your point, it's a wonderful way to end. We're not just throwing this stuff at them. You figure out ways to get them to be in the lead of their education. And when we do that, then the sky is in fact the limit. Well, thank you very much and good luck.
At this time, we are going to take a quick break and we're going to return at that's at 11:45. If you could come back at 11:45, again, restrooms are outside in the rear. Please visit also the exhibitors and we will meet you back here at 11:45 a.m. Thank you.
Just one, two.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I can hear you. How are you?
Hi, my name is Crystal Love. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you as well.
How do you pronounce your name?
Anisha Kakar.
Anisha Kakar. Hi, Anisha. I am an eighth grade teacher in Voorhees, New Jersey. I teach English and I kind of infuse a lot of social studies in it.
Oh, okay, that's nice. I teach in Franklin High School. I teach 11th and 12th graders.
Oh my.
Yeah, it's nice.
Well, you know something, I just get them ready for you. That's all.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I was glad to see somebody had turned on their camera because I've been turning it on
Yeah.
and off and on and off.
Oh, okay.
You know, but from what I gather, it looks like we're the only ones that have it on.
Yeah,
Testing.
I think we're
Testing,
supposed to
testing.
have it off, so
Oh, really? I didn't know.
I don't know. Um,
You know how to turn it off, right?
no, I'm trying to figure it out.
Okay. Okay. Up at the top, and we're looking on the right-hand side, it should say chat, people, raise, view, more. Do you see that
Yeah,
all the way up?
yeah.
Okay. And then do you see where it says camera and it's black?
Okay, I see it now. But
Just click the camera.
yeah, I did.
Okay, if you clicked it, it should have, your camera should have, you should be black now. Like when I do this to my camera, I'm clicking my camera, there.
Okay.
So now I don't see your face and you don't see mine. Does that make sense?
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All righty, take care.
Thank you. You too.
Assalamu alaikum, Hotep, peace family. This is Bashir Muhammad Patah Akinyele. Just seeing anybody still alive. Hey, how you doing?
How are you? My name
all
is
right.
Crystal Love.
Peace,
How are
peace,
you?
family. How you doing, Sister Love? How's everything? Good?
I am doing good. Bashir,
Awesome.
you're the second person that I've seen so far. I believe Anishka Qatar has joined
Anisha,
us.
yes, yes.
She's gone on and off.
Oh, okay.
But it's so glad to see you. I teach at Voorhees Middle School in South Jersey in Camden County. I teach 8th grade English.
Awesome, awesome. That's what's up. That's awesome. I teach.
Can I get right back with you, dear? I'm sorry. I'm trying to get these kids to stop calling me.
Oh, okay. No, no, take your time.
Okay, I'm sorry, dear. I'm back.
No, it's cool. I was gonna say that I teach history and Africana studies at Weequahic High School, but if you're from Newark, you say Weequay, you know. So you may hear me say Weequay.
Okay.
But I've been teaching for over 30 years now, you know.
Oh, wow.
And been an activist. I'm a community activist, but one of the things we've been pushing in Newark is the Amistad law, which the Newark Public Schools we forced the Newark Public Schools to adhere to about I would say about 6 years ago, about
Okay.
6, 7 years ago. You know, so we did that. I helped write the Amistad curriculum for the Newark Public Schools.
Excellent.
You know, but you know, I'm getting close to retirement, so you know, so I'm just just trying to, I'm just trying to, I don't know, still be for the students, be there for the students, I should say,
Right.
be there for the students. But you know, my time is coming to an end. I don't know if it's going to be this year or the year after next, but it's definitely coming to an end.
Yeah, you sound like me. This is my 20th year,
Oh,
and
wow.
I'll be 71 in
What?
August.
No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah,
71.
I worked 30 years at Verizon, and at 52, I retired, never taught.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so I've been teaching for the last 20 years, and I don't know if it's going to be this coming
Yeah.
June or the following June, but as long as you're healthy, I mean, what
Yeah.
am I going to do? Just stay home and, play
Right.
with my little
Right.
dog wherever he
Oh
is.
man.
But
Hello.
Hey, how you doing,
hey,
Miss
Sandra.
Sandra? How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
All right, all right. Oh, we got some more teachers on the camera. Oh, great,
Yeah,
great, great.
I wasn't on the camera, but I was paying attention to everything. So nice to meet you, Crystal and
Bashir.
Bashir.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Nah, it's cool. How you doing, Miss Sandra? Where you teach at? What school district?
I teach third grade in Passaic District.
Awesome. Oh, you up north from me. I'm in North at Weequahic
Yeah,
High School. Yeah.
I teach
Yeah.
1 year in Newark.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're familiar with Newark, Brick City. That's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, I
But
feel
Miss
outnumbered. Is there anybody else on? Hello, is anybody from South Jersey out there?
I'm
wow.
sorry, guys. Hi, I'm Ernestine. You can't see me because I'm on my work computer. So I think I'm gonna switch to my personal computer for the camera. But I'm pre-service. I'm like an intern and long-term sub. I've been teaching ELA, fourth grade for 1 whole year. So I'm excited for the new school year. So I'm in Newark as
Awesome.
well. I live in
Oh, man.
Jersey City, but I teach in Newark.
Oh man, you a hop, skipping, and jumping away from us, but good. You teach in Newark. That's what's up.
Yes,
Well,
yes,
nice
yes.
meeting you,
Nice
Miss
to meet
Ernestine.
Ernestine. Yes, Ernestine.
Nice meeting you,
Nice
Miss
meeting you,
Ernestine.
Ernestine.
Nice to meet
Can I
you
ask a
too.
question? How are you all pronouncing Newark? See, I'm saying Newark, and you all are
Nah,
saying
you're
Newark.
pronouncing it correctly,
You're
sister.
pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
Newark.
pronounce. It's just that if you're from Newark, like you have that, it's
It's like that accent we have. It's
Oh,
North.
Yeah, yeah, you pronounce
It is
Newark
Okay.
like
North.
fork. Right, like,
Okay.
you know,
Because
like
I'm going
fork,
like, are we
like
talking about? Because
North.
I go to Newark Airport, Liberty, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
is we the same place? Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I am cracking on you all. No shade.
No, it's all
No, it's
good.
okay.
It's
It's
all
okay.
good.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's all
I'm in
good.
South Jersey. I'm real far south.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
in,
What, how you doing,
my school
Miss
is
Field?
Woodruff, Upper Deerfield, which is in Bridgeton.
Wow, wow. What
Hi,
nice
Kim.
meeting you.
How are you?
Hi,
Yes.
good. How are you? I've been teaching for 29 years,
Woo.
social studies, 6th and
Wow.
7th grade.
You just like me. Wow, you've been teaching a long time, huh?
Nice to meet you, Kim.
Yes,
You
nice
too.
to meet you.
Nice
Nice to
meeting
meet you. Well, Miss Love, woo, you had you left one career and then you went into education and been doing that for what, 20 years, you said, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's
That's
the best
incredible.
job in the whole world, and all of you all definitely, I know, agree about that. It's the best job. Now, where is Bridgeport? Kim, where's Bridgeport? Did you say
No,
Bridgeport?
it's actually Bridgeton.
I'm
So
sorry.
it's outside of the city of Bridgeton. So it's not Bridgeton School District, but it's in the city of Bridgeton, Upper Deerfield. It's a small rural district.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Is that
And
South Jersey?
It's South Jersey, yeah. So
Oh,
it's the other side of Vineland.
oh, okay. So you're really south.
Yeah, pretty far
oh.
south, yeah.
Is
Okay.
that down there by, what's that, Willenboro or something like that?
Oh, that's further. We're further.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're only probably 40 minutes outside of the shore.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
way
you're
down
really south.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really south. I'm closer to Cherry Hill, Philadelphia. So I'm like 13 minutes from Philadelphia, like from the Ben Franklin Bridge. And Kim is probably an hour from me south, if I'm not mistaken. A
About
good
that
hour.
45 minutes or so, yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. That's
Oh,
all right.
welcome.
That's all right.
Welcome.
Wow.
Do
Is
you
this
all
your
have
first?
pro?
Yeah.
I was
Go
going
ahead.
to ask, do you all each have Black studies within your own curriculum?
I have integrated into the curriculum the Holocaust and the Amistad studies. So I actually write the curriculum. I'm working on that now. But I've always been the one to teach the African American studies or the Reconstruction and the
Welcome back.
times of slavery. But I don't know that it's taught at other grade levels.
And for those that are online, welcome back. We are
Oh,
starting
you coming
again
back.
with our
All right.
next presenter on
Well, nice
day
meeting
one. We are
everybody.
truly enjoying
Nice
ourselves. Are
meeting
we
you.
not enjoying ourselves? Yes, I love it. I love the energy, the applause. Yes, the engagement. And we are now having Discover Amistad presentation by our esteemed guest, Christopher Menapace. Did I pronounce that correct? Give him a warm welcome. Christopher Menapace.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Menapace. I am the Director of Education at Discovering Amistad. So I want to start by thanking both Kean University and the Amistad Commission for inviting us here today to teach you about the story of the Amistad Rebellion and how to teach that rebellion. So let me start with a little bit of background on myself. I am from where our organization, Discovering Amistad, is actually in Connecticut, not New Jersey, but my roots are in New Jersey. I was born in Wayne, but grew up, most of my youth was in Connecticut. So I have a place in my heart for New Haven style pizza. I'm sorry. I think the New Jersey governor and our governor, Ned Lamont, kind of gotten a Twitter spat about pizza at some point recently. But, you know, Discovering Amistad owns and operates the Amistad vessel out of Connecticut. Right now, it is undergoing some preservation work. I do have a kind of virtual tour recorded for you for people online as well, so I can show you what the ship looks like. Anyone here seen the Amistad movie? A lot. Wow, a lot of people. That would be good even in Connecticut, on a hands raised right there. But we own and operate the recreation of the original Amistad. The original Amistad does not exist anymore. I'll tell you what happened to it in a minute. Built in 2000, stationed in Mystic, Connecticut, although our offices are in New Haven, Connecticut. And we teach the story of the Amistad Rebellion around the Northeast. You know, we are a Connecticut-based organization, but I've taught in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Virginia, DC. And in times past, we've gone up and down the East Coast with the ship. Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, Cuba, Sierra Leone, United Kingdom, Canada, Portugal, and that's with the ship. So it is a mobile operating sailing vessel, although like I said, right now it is undergoing a multi-year preservation project. I'll show you what we're working on when we do the virtual tour, but we also do outreaches like this. So, you know, when all the teachers here, we're one of those resources you have to teach this history. You know, we can come into the classroom, we can do virtual programs, and when the ship is mobile again, I can sail it. If you're in a port community, I can sail it to you and teach you the story on the ship itself. But I came to the organization about 6 years ago in 2020, an interesting time to be a teacher, right? So came to the organization in 2020. So I've been teaching the Amistad for 6 years. But my background is public history. I heard that called out a few times by our speakers. Public history is my background, although I did start as a classroom teacher, Vinyl Tech in Middletown, Connecticut, taught 9th and 11th grade with honors, American history. But I decided I wanted to move into the nonprofit / museum field. So I can continue to work with students, but really focusing around one specific topic, and that was slavery. You know, it wasn't my first museum. I started teaching Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harry Beecher Stowe in Hartford, Connecticut, the museum there. And my focus in going to school and getting my master's was all about Northern slavery. You know, we talk so much, I'm sure this is the case in New Jersey as well as Connecticut, about Southern slavery, antebellum slavery, you know, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. But what about the slavery in the North? What about Connecticut? What about New Jersey? And still existed in the time of the Amistad, as we'll get into. Slavery still existed in both of our states, Connecticut and New Jersey, and it played a very important role on how the story played out. You know, we talk about, you know, think of people as figures of their times. We talked about George Washington. Well, there were people criticizing George Washington in 1776. There were abolitionist movements before the Civil War, before the American Revolution. You know, states like Massachusetts and New York had already abolished slavery by the time of the Amistad because there was an abolitionist movement pushing against it. So people, even in those times, were speaking out. And speaking out, that's kind of a big part of our curriculum at Discovering Amistad. We are teaching this story of the Amistad through the lens of dehumanization, resistance, and freedom. We call it the Freedom Schooner Amistad, because this is not just a story of oppression. It is not just a story of slavery. It's a fight. It's a fight, a successful fight for freedom. So that is why we call it the Freedom Schooner Amistad. So to give you a little bit of a roadmap of what we're going to do in this first hour, and then I know we have the breakout rooms where we'll get a little bit more into depth on the teaching tools, but a brief introduction to the content. Trust me, I could go on for hours and hours about all the details about the Amistad. And you'll see me pacing around. I'm a mover. I'm like the TED Talks, right? I like to walk back and forth as I teach. In fact, me and my brother's nicknames growing up, instead of Metapaces, they just call us the Pacers. So a brief introduction to the content of the Amistad. If you want to know more, again, I'll stick around. We have the breakout rooms. I like to have questions be asked throughout. So if you're comfortable shouting, that's fine with me. I don't like to save questions to the end because I'm a little ADD and I forget my question by the time I get to the end. But then we're going to talk about things to consider for all ages of teaching this story. And I've taught the story of the Amistad to elementary school, middle school, high school, college, adult, every age group you can think of, except maybe babies. I have taught the story of the Amistad to. Then we'll get into the resources available to you now. You know, some of them are going to be physical resources. I have some objects here. Some of them will be digital resources. And when we get into the breakout rooms, get into some of the activities that I can provide to you, because that was some of the things I heard people talking about earlier, is like the resources available to actually teach this story and creating projects, creating activities. I have some of those, as well as future learning opportunities if you want to know more about the Amistad. I should stop looking up there because I have it actually right here in front of me. So when we talk about the story of the Amistad, some of you probably know a good amount about the Amistad. Some of you might be a brand new story. We do not begin the story of the Amistad on the Amistad ship because, as we like to say at Discovering Amistad, this is a story with a ship, not a ship with a story. It is not the ship that is the main character of the Amistad rebellions. It is the Africans that were on the ship. It is Sangbe PA, not Joseph Cinque, not his real name. We'll get into that in a minute. It is Sangbe PA and the mainly Mende Africans that were on board the Amistad in 1839 who fought for their freedom. And as they are our main characters, we need to give some background on them. We can't just jump into the rebellion like the movie does. You want to know about who these people are before they were ever on the ship, because now it's going to make sense how Sangbe had the skills, had the leadership available to him to fight successfully for the freedom of him and the other Africans aboard the vessel. So all of the Amistad Africans, all of the people that were on the Amistad were from West Africa. We would call their homeland today Sierra Leone. They didn't call it Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone was really just Freetown, the capital now, as you can kind of see. Got my laser pointer here, Sierra Leone, but you can see all these other names here. West Africa might be the most diverse part of the entire world. The humans have existed there longer than almost any other place, except maybe other parts of Africa. So you have dozens of languages, ethnicities, and cultures and religions all right next to each other. So I said most of them are Mende. You can see the Mende here. That is one of dozens of groups in West Africa. Sangbe PA, also known as Joseph Cinque. Joseph Cinque was the name given to him by his Spanish enslavers. His Mende name was Sangbe PA. He is Mende. That is his language, his culture, and his ethnicity. Not all the Amistad Africans were Mende. Most of them were, but not all of them. Some were Gola, Sando, Kona, Temne, and many others, but almost all spoke Mende. It was considered a trade language. And it kind of was used by most people as a language to trade in, because in southern Sierra Leone, they were the dominant kind of culture and group. So I mentioned one of the main themes when we teach about the Amistad is dehumanization. And obviously there's going to be a difference. We're going to scaffold that differently when we teach that for middle school, high school, and elementary school. But understanding what dehumanization is actually quite easy. Treating someone as if they are not human. Everyone of all ages can understand that. To treat someone as if they are not human. And dehumanization is the first way we start to teach this story. And we give them examples of how the Amistad Africans and other enslaved people, other victims of the slave trade, were dehumanized. One of those ways is through a coffle. Coffle is defined as a line of animals, prisoners, or enslaved, chained and driven along together. So you see in the definition of coffle itself, not only are you seeing men, women, and children there marched in a line, but you are seeing how in the definition it is treating people as animals. Another big part of our curriculum, another big part of teaching this story, and you've heard a lot about it already, is past-present connection. I'm sure every single one of your students in every single class is going to sit there and think, why am I learning this? The answer to that question is past-present connection. We have to help the students understand how this history impacts us in the modern day, how we can connect to this history, not only through the legacy and its impacts, but also how these struggles for freedom, this oppression, this dehumanization still occurs in the modern day. So you see in the definition again, how you can connect that. Prisoners. Enslaved people have not been the only group of oppressed people or dehumanized people. And we need to connect that history throughout. Because as we talked about oppression and dehumanization earlier today already, we still see it in our modern day world. Not just here in New Jersey, not just here in the United States, but around the world. So when we talk about the Amistad Africans, they are dehumanized. They are kidnapped in 1839. 1839, they are kidnapped and brought to a place called Lomboko. Lomboko does not exist anymore. It was run by the Spanish as an illegal slave trading hub. I say illegal because by 1839, the international slave trade is against the law. In 1808, the British, the French, the Spanish, the United States, and the Portuguese all agree to outlaw the international slave trade. But as we talked about laws and enforcing laws earlier, only really the British enforce that law, and a little bit the United States. The Spanish and Portuguese, and with Napoleon it goes back and forth, do not enforce the illegal nature of the international slave trade, which is why I'm telling you the story about the Amistad. Because in 1839, 500 kidnapped human beings are put on a ship, not the Amistad. The Amistad comes in later. That's one of the biggest misconceptions about the Amistad, is that that is the ship that brought them from Africa. It is not. We'll get to the Amistad soon. But the ship 500 Africans, including Sengbe Pierre, put on is a Portuguese ship called the Tesoura. Anyone here speak Portuguese? Tesoura means treasure. That is the name of this slave ship. And that's what it is, a slave ship. I want to be very clear when I say slave ship, because the Amistad is not a slave ship. And when I say that, it's because a slave ship was built for one purpose only: the transportation of kidnapped human beings across the Atlantic Ocean. A slave ship, if you saw it in the modern day, might be the largest sailing vessel you had ever seen in your entire life. These are massive, massive vessels carrying hundreds of people on board, and they have built-in infrastructure to stop slave rebellions. This is another thing I often, find when teaching this history, is that when training others to teach this history, is that you might hear about one or two slave rebellions. Right, you might hear about the Haitian Rebellion or Nat Turner, but there are countless slave rebellions. The Amistad is one of them, of course, but slave rebellions on slave ships happened all the time. The reason you don't hear more about them is because they were often not successful, because the Portuguese knew they were going to happen. The Spanish knew they were going to happen. So they had barricades, mounted cannons, nets around the side, all this built-in infrastructure to stop successful rebellions. They would divide the enslaved people up to have hostages if one side rebelled and the other did not. And I have so many resources I can show you a little bit later, like a 3-dimensional tour of a slave ship and what that means. So the reason I called the Tesoura a slave ship and not the Amistad is because the Tesoura had all those things. The Amistad does not. We'll get into what the Amistad really is. But the Tesoura leaves Lomboko in 1839 and sails to Havana, Cuba. Anyone have an idea how long do you think this would take them to sail? 2 months, I heard exactly. 2 to 3 months to sail across the Atlantic Ocean. So 2 to 3 months to sail across the Atlantic Ocean to Havana, Cuba. We'll get into more specifics and a deeper dive into what the international slave trade meant. Yes. It very much depended on season. So, when we think of hurricane season, right? The reason it's hurricane season is because the winds start to blow from West Africa. They go from east to west, and then from the Caribbean, they go south to north. So depending on when you left, you are going to get more speed from the wind. And they called it the trade winds. And it also plays an important role in how this story becomes a northern story, those same winds. So good question. It absolutely depended on when they left. And they're leaving in the late spring. The late spring, they're leaving Lomboko. Now, this is where the Amistad comes in, because the 500 Africans are brought to Havana, Cuba. Cuba was part of the Spanish Empire at that time. And remember, the international slave trade, it's illegal. So what I refer to the Amistad as is a smuggling ship. Because what happens once the Amistad or the Tesoro arrives in Havana is that these 500 Africans are sold off to different plantation owners. They are sold off to different slave traders in Havana. Havana at this time in 1839 is the capital of the Caribbean slave trade. And the Amistad, by the way, this is an actual picture of the modern day Amistad. This is the ship that Discovering Amistad owns and operates. So this is what we look like when we sail around. And this is pretty accurate to what the original Amistad looked like. We'll talk about how we came to that conclusion and how we remade the vessel. But the Amistad is much, much smaller than the Tesoro. It's not carrying 500 people, it's carrying 53. Two men, Jose Ruiz and Pedro Montes. They are Spanish men in Cuba who purchase 49 men from the Tesoro, including Sangbe PA, and 4 children. 49 men and 4 children between 8 and 12 years old. They will take these 53 kidnapped Africans from the Tesoro, then they will hire the Amistad. Anyone know what Amistad actually means? Friendship. An ironic name for what is about to happen, because the Amistad is now going to be used to transport these enslaved human beings from Western Cuba to Eastern Cuba. So remember, the Amistad is not the ship that brought them from Africa. It is the second vessel that Sangbe PA and the others are going to be put on. It is a Cuban ship only meant to sail around the Caribbean. And often what they would do, because this was not the first time that the Amistad was used to transport enslaved people, what they would do is they would bring the enslaved to Havana, sell them, and use these smaller, faster vessels to go from Havana to the plantations of the buyer. So they're just going to the other side of Cuba. And it's called a floating general store because the Amistad is just being used by the captain, or man named Ramon Ferrer, to transport whoever is paying him to transport whatever. Oftentimes that meant enslaved people. Sometimes that meant tools, weapons, food, wine, whatever. Yes. Yes. Basically, the Atlantic world was a maritime society until railroads became more popular later in the 19th century. If you wanted to go anywhere in Cuba, you took a boat. Even here in the Northeast, you know, I live not too far. I'm on the Connecticut River is where I live. The Connecticut River was settled because even going from Hartford to New Haven, you took a boat. That's what the Amistad Africans will do actually when they get to Connecticut, is they're being transported around the state on boats. Until trains come around, you traveled by ship. That is how you traveled. That's why so many of the early settlements of the United States by Europeans are port cities. So it was not practical to do land transportation with this many enslaved people. So the Amistad, smaller, it's only going 3 to 4 days. It is not doing a 2 to 3 month sail. It is traveling 3 to 4 days from Western Cuba to Eastern Cuba. And it's only carrying supplies for that. But the captain's also being paid to transport other things. So he's being paid by Ruiz and Montes to transport the kidnapped human beings, but he's also bringing objects to sell at the next port of call. So the reason why they are going to Eastern Cuba is because of the sugarcane plantations. We often learn about the cash crops of American U.S. slavery: tobacco, indigo, rice, cotton, all of these things. In the Gulf Coast, it was sugarcane. In the Caribbean, it was one of two things. They either grew sugar or they grew coffee, once in a while rice, but mainly sugar or coffee. Because Haiti, the largest successful slave rebellion in human history, Haiti had already gained its independence. a lot of these sugar plantations moved to places like Cuba and Puerto Rico. Always very popular when I start to present. So these sugarcane plantations, we all like sugar, right? I had a nice latte this morning. I already have the Cold Stone scoped out for my lunch, very healthy lunch for me a little bit later. We all like sugar. Well, they like sugar in 1839 as well, and they're getting their sugar from slave labor. They're getting their sugar pretty much exclusively in 1839 from slave labor in the Caribbean. So if you lived in New Jersey, if you lived in Connecticut, if you lived in Europe, when you went to the general store and you bought your sugar, it profited the enslavers. That is our second big connection, past-present connection. I'll turn this around to the students. I don't tell them the past-present connections 9 times out of 10. I will ask them what they think. So I'll turn around to them. It's like, what does that sound like to you? Depending, of course, on the age group. Sometimes I'll ask instead, do we have anything in the modern day that we buy that comes from the suffering of other people? Chocolate, right? That's often West Africa. Yeah. Yeah, Shein, Temu. I first learned about Shein and Temu, cell phones, right? We have so many connections, and I tell you, every single group I've given this program to in the last 6 years gets that. They all know it. The elementary school students, the middle school students, the high school students, they all can answer that. That's their easiest, that's their softball question. But it's an important past-present connection because it helps us understand the oppression and the systems of oppression that still exist in the modern day. Oftentimes when I talk about the international slave trade, I'll have a student call it human trafficking, right? Because this, like human trafficking in the modern day, was illegal. Slavery wasn't illegal in 1839 in the United States, depending on the state. But the slave trade by this time had been outlawed for 30 years. It's longer than some of you have been alive. It's been outlawed, yet it's still happening. So human trafficking is illegal, but we all know that it still happens. So thinking about these systems, this is the first connection we use to talk about systems. So the Amistad is on its way to the sugarcane plantations of eastern Cuba. So the captain of the Amistad, he is, bringing with him tools to sell to these plantations. How do you harvest sugarcane? Anyone know? A machete. A specific kind of machete called a sugarcane knife. I brought some objects with me. I didn't bring a machete. I'm sorry. I keep that on the ship. But I did bring things, and when we do the breakout groups, I can actually hand these out. But we all know object-based learning. We know tactile-based learning. So I bring a nice educator kit when I do outreach, and I have even more objects on the ship. And the ship, of course, itself is my best teaching tool. One of the things I bring with me is sugarcane. Some of your students have probably eaten sugarcane, raw sugarcane before. You can eat it raw. Certain grocery stores will sell. This is dried out so it doesn't rot on me. But this is real sugarcane, right? So just handing this out, making sure that especially younger kids don't eat it, but handing this out and being able to them feel and touch sugarcane can help them connect to the story more, help them understand. It's not just listening. It's not just discussion. They want to touch things. Even the adults, we want to touch and interact with stuff. So another way of teaching this story is bring some objects with you. I can actually tell you a little bit later about where I get some of these things. It's actually, some of them are harder to get, but some of them are quite easy. So they're on their way to the sugarcane plantations, but they never get there. They never get there because of Sangbei, PA. Sangbei, PA, he, like I said, is Mende, but he's also a father. He's a husband. He's a rice farmer.
Hello,
and he's a
I'm
member
sorry
of
to
something
interrupt.
called the
However,
Poro
can
Society.
initials RW
Anyone here part of any secret
please
societies?
mute your mic?
That's a test. I'm sorry, sir, you gave it up. But secret society, and he really was part of this secret society, which, by the way, still exists in West Africa today. The Poro Society is a leadership organization. They settle disputes, hold religious ceremonies, and defend communities against things like slavers. And Sengbei PA was part of that Poro society. It wasn't a secret that he was in it because they would have body marking indications. Rather than tattoos, scarification showing rank and membership in the Poro society. So when the Amistad Africans decide to rebel, led by Sengbei PA, this is why I always say I can go on for hours and hours, is actually their second rebellion. They tried to rebel on the Tesora and failed. But they rebel on the Amistad. They look for leaders. They look to Sengbei, and on his body it shouts, "I am a leader." It also helps that the fact that he's the first one to get out of his shackles. These are not real. That's one of the things we have to be careful with object-based learning. I do not want to hand out shackles without some sort of preface. These are not real. These are not artifacts. This has never been used to enslave somebody. And also giving the option for difficult objects like these shackles, which are historically accurate, but a copy, a replica, that they don't have to touch them if they don't want to, right? Especially with your students of color, it might be incredibly difficult. And I know my boss, a woman of color, the first time I brought her onto the ship, she needed to take about 15 minutes before stepping aboard. And I completely understood, this is a ship that was used to carry enslaved people, right? So giving that preface, giving that opt-out for some of these more difficult objects. But this is what these shackles would look like. They're heavy. And this is just for one wrist. They would have shackles on each wrist, on each ankle. And I know on the Amistad, they also had neck shackles. On the Tesora, those shackles would then be chained together in lines of about a dozen. Sengbei PA, though, he finds a loose nail. With this nail, he's able to pick the lock on his shackles. It probably helped that some of the Amistad Africans were blacksmiths. That's the other thing we always try to focus on, is the skills of the Amistad Africans, their background and their knowledge, and how that led to their freedom. So they used their knowledge as blacksmiths to assist with Sengbei PA to break out of his shackles. So he gets out of his shackles and he has time to free the other Africans, because the Amistad is a coastal ship. It means that there are no sleeping quarters for the crew. And if you've been to the Caribbean before in the summer, you do not want to sleep below deck on a ship with no air conditioning. It gets much, much more hot and humid. So the reason I mention that is because the Amistad Africans are below in the cargo hold. All of the crew are above. They do not know that Sengbei PA and the other 53 Africans have now freed themselves from their shackles. They are free in the cargo hold, and they start to plan their rebellion. Well, I remember I mentioned Ruiz, Montez Ruiz. They hire the Amistad, they hire the captain, Ramon Ferrer, but he brought other stuff with him, remember? He brought a box of machetes. Where do you think he stored that box of machetes? Below deck. Do you think that was a very good idea? Maybe he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. I got a whole list of dad jokes lined up. Trust me, and I don't exaggerate, I have a 2-page document of ship sayings that are all related in some way. But this means that Sengbei PA, this man right here, they start to search the cargo hold. It's actually the children that find the box of machetes. With these machetes, the Amistad Africans launched the rebellion. Some of these people aboard, including Grabo and others, are experienced warriors. So they go first, they arm themselves with the machetes, and they launch the rebellion on the Amistad. Now, the crew of the Amistad is only about 5 people, 2 of them enslaved. So there are 5 members of the crew and the 2 enslavers. So 7 people above deck, 53 below. You have the captain, Ramon Ferrer. He has an enslaved boy as part of the crew called Antonio. He's 14 years old. There's the cook, Celestino, and the 2 deckhands, Jacinto and Manuel. So, as well as Ruiz and Montes. So 7 people upstairs, and they are armed. You can see in the image, they have muskets, they have pistols. But once you see the size of the Amistad, tiny in comparison to this room that we're sitting in right now, 53 people armed with machetes versus 7 people with pistols and muskets, it's a foregone conclusion what's going to happen. Their first target is actually the cook Celestino, because he had been making threatening gestures towards the Amistad Africans. They take revenge on Celestino first. And then they go after the captain. Now, this isn't a bloodless fight. The Amistad Africans, some of them will be killed when the captain opens up with his musket. So some of the Amistad Africans will die in this fight for freedom, but they quickly overtake the captain and kill him. The 2 deckhands, Jacinto and Manuel, they jump overboard. They're just off the coast of Cuba. They row 12 miles back to Cuba. Now the Amistad Africans are in charge of the vessel. They are now free. They've regained their freedom, and they've decided to keep the enslavers alive, Ruiz and Montez. Why would they do that? Navigation. The Amistad Africans are blacksmiths, leaders, farmers, merchants. None of them aboard are sailors. Mende Land, as they called it, was more inland. They might use river navigation, but they're not used to sailing an ocean traveling vessel and navigating in unfamiliar waters in an unfamiliar sky. Get into that in a minute. So they decide to keep Ruiz and Montez alive specifically to sail and navigate the ship. And you wonder, well, then how did they end up in Connecticut? Well, the Amistad Africans instruct Ruiz and Montez, sail towards the rising sun. Sail east. My quick preface is that this story of the Amistad is multi-subject. You don't have to just teach it in history class. I taught it in science class too. Because celestial navigation, we coordinate with planetariums around Connecticut to teach the story of the Amistad. Because when Ruiz and Montez are instructed to sail east towards the rising sun, they do. But then the sun goes down. And because of the role of the stars, the Amistad is turned around west by Ruiz and Montez without the Amistad Africans knowing. That's because the sky looks very different in Sierra Leone than it does in Cuba. You cannot see the North Star in Sierra Leone. It is too low on the horizon, but as you travel north, the North Star rises. The constellations that the Amistad Africans would have used, something maybe like the Southern Cross, could not be seen in Cuba. So they lost their ability to navigate with the night sky once they were in Cuba. Well, Ruiz and Montez, they still knew how to navigate, and they don't want to go to Sierra Leone. They want to be picked up by anybody on the East Coast of the United States. So they zigzag back and forth for weeks on end. Some of the Amistad Africans die of dehydration. Remember we said only 3 to 4 days of supplies on the Amistad. So what ends up happening is the Amistad is captured in Long Island Sound by a U.S. naval vessel called the USS Washington and towed to Connecticut. It's towed to Connecticut even though it's found in New York and Long Island, because Connecticut still had slavery in 1839. When it's found in New York had abolished slavery, but the captain of the Washington wanted to claim salvage of the ship and its human cargo. Its human cargo. In Connecticut, that included the enslaved people. In New York, it did not. So that is why this becomes a Connecticut story. Connecticut becomes a part of this story because of their laws on slavery, which, by the way, William Lloyd Garrison called Connecticut at this time the Georgia of the North. This is a state in New England that was probably most pro-slavery. So the Amistad, yeah, you have a question? Connecticut, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised at all. One of the, because my focus was on Northern slavery, I focused a lot on Connecticut. Connecticut goes backwards a lot after the American Revolution. So they passed gradual emancipation in 1789. What that means is that enslaved people would be freed at the age of 21, only if you were born after the law was passed. But they also, in 1818, passed a constitution requiring the right to vote to be white. You had to be a white man to vote in Connecticut. That only went into effect in 1818. So there's a short window after the American Revolution where black landowning men could vote in Connecticut. They take that away in 1818. And they had their own black codes. I won't get too much into that. I could go on again a lot. So Connecticut was not an abolitionist state. It was not an abolitionist state. In fact, the judge we're going to talk about, well, closed the only black school in all of Connecticut only a few years before. So the trials will take place in Hartford, Connecticut. The Africans are kept in New Haven, Connecticut. That's where they're sent to jail. But the trials will actually take place in Hartford. And what they're trying to answer is where the Africans are from. Because while slavery is legal, the slave trade is not. And so Ruiz and Montes claim that is not Joseph Cinque. That is not Sangbe Pie, that's Joseph Cinque. They gave him a Spanish name to make it seem like he was born into slavery in Cuba, because slavery was still legal in the United States. It was still legal in Spain, but you had to be born into slavery. So Ruiz and Montes are claiming that Sangbe Pie is Joseph Cinque, and he was born on a plantation in Cuba. We know that's not the truth, but that's what they'll claim in court. That's their argument. And they will work with a translator. The Amistad Africans will work with abolitionists, white and black abolitionists, as well as an African translator who is part of the British Navy named James Covey. And with that, their powerful stories coming through the translator convinced the Supreme Court to side in their favor, because like many trials today, this goes through many different levels. There's 2 trials in Hartford. Then it gets appealed and goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And you'll notice there's only 8 Supreme Court justices at this time. One of them had died. And to speak further about what you said about Connecticut not being very abolitionist friendly, the Supreme Court rules 7-1 in favor of the Amistad Africans. The one that rules against them is from Connecticut. So 7-1, the Amistad case, the first human rights and civil rights trial in the United States, it's often called the Amistad trial, goes before the Supreme Court in 1841, and they are ruled to be illegally enslaved and must regain their freedom. What does that leave out? How to get home. The Amistad Africans are not given a means or compensation or any way of returning home. So what this means is that the surviving Africans have to fundraise. That's where New Jersey and other states come in, because after the 1841 Supreme Court trial, the Amistad Africans go on tour. They go around northern states, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and they go to a lot of times black churches and give their story about how they have successfully fought for freedom and now they want to go home. And the money is donated to the Amistad Africans. It takes 9 months, but they gain enough money to go home, but there's some strings attached to that money. Says, we'll pay for you to go home if you convert to Christianity and you found a Christian mission in Sierra Leone. So I bring that up because we've talked so much about a full picture of history, right? The goals of the abolitionists do not always align with the goals of the Amistad Africans. The Amistad Africans' goal is to return home to their families and return to their lives. While the abolitionists, they want that too, but they want to make them Western. They say that very, very clearly. They have them put on American-style clothing. They have them learn English. They have them convert to their religion. All of these things are involved. So it causes some conflicts. I'll get into that in a little bit. But it means the Amistad Africans are now home. The Amistad Africans return home in 1842, but the story of the Amistad does not end in 1842. This legacy, this history, has a lot of ripple effects. While this does not end slavery in the United States, it does lead to a growth in the abolitionist movement. This Supreme Court trial in the story of this violent rebellion off the coast of Cuba captivates audiences around the world. This becomes a big story in Britain. It becomes a big story in the United States as well. You have a question?
Black laborers. Did they receive funding from any white groups in the tri-state area who didn't want free Africans there taking jobs?
Yes. So there's many answers to your question. Absolutely, there were white abolitionists involved in fundraising for the Amistad Africans. Some of those groups were colonization groups. Some of those groups were the organizations that wanted slavery to end and then wanted Black people to go back to Africa, even though the vast majority were born in the United States. Now, one nice thing about this story, and I was just reading up on refreshing myself on some of the abolitionists for an exhibit I'm working on, but the Amistad Committee, not the Amistad Commission, the Amistad Committee, which was the main abolitionist group organizing all of this, rejected the funding of the colonizationists because they felt it tainted the story. Their goal was not to force people back to Africa. The Amistad Africans wanted to go home, but they did not feel it was appropriate to take money from colonization groups that wanted all Black people to be pushed back to Africa. So, great question. So the abolitionists, and I say that in more broad terms, I should say anti-slavery, because the colonizationists are not abolitionists. The anti-slavery movement in the United States grows because of this movement. Think about your units on abolition. Think of your units on the foundations of the start of the Civil War. You begin on this question of slavery. Can you think of anything before 1839? Not much, right? This fight against slavery begins around this time period. And this is the first successful story of the abolitionists. The stories of Dred Scott, John Brown, another Connecticut guy, I just want to point that out. John Brown, all that comes after this. In fact, I was just, again, reading up for that exhibit. John Brown specifically mentions the Amistad Rebellion in Sangbe, PA as some of his inspiration. Yeah, of course, this is not the start of the fight against slavery. It's the first victory of the abolitionist. Absolutely. We think about the Quakers in the 1700s pushing against slavery. Many of the northern states like Massachusetts and New York had already abolished slavery at this time. So the fight against slavery does not begin in 1839. This is just the first big national victory for the abolitionists. And inspires many others. And in fact, it inspires many other enslaved people to rebel, because when we talk about abolition, we have to talk about the role enslaved people had. This inspires enslaved people to fight back. A man named Madison Washington. No one heard of the most successful slave rebellion in U.S. history is not the Amistad. It's the Creole. Anyone heard that before? A few people, right? Yes. And I was just in Virginia. Newport, keep getting Newport mixed up, but I was in Virginia teaching the story of the Creole as part of their Sailfest organization and their Juneteenth programming. So the Creole, a man named Madison Washington, the reason why he launches his rebellion, he flees from slavery in Maryland, goes to Philadelphia. I know some of you are probably pretty close to Philadelphia where you're teaching in New Jersey, right? Well, he sees this portrait of Sangbe, PA in 1841. So this is after the Supreme Court trial, before the Africans have actually made it home. And so he sees this portrait of Sangbe, PA, and I'll show you the portrait in a minute, and he's inspired. He hears about the Amistad Rebellion and the successful fight for freedom. He returns to Maryland to try to rescue his wife from slavery, and he's captured, put on a domestic slave ship called the Creole with over 100 people on board, launches his own Amistad-style rebellion, takes control of the vessel, frees his wife, and they sailed to the Bahamas. because he was born into slavery. He would not have gotten the same trial as the Amistad Africans. So you see the ripple effects that go out because of this trial. In fact, one of the things, getting ahead of myself, you'll see right here, that is real money. I'll pass it around a little bit later. Real money from Sierra Leone. Whose face do you think that is? Sangbe PAs. That is modern day money from Sierra Leone. Think about who we put on the money here, very problematically, but the people that are put on the money of a country, they're usually put on there because people see them as important figures for their nation. And again, there's debates around that. But, and that's one of my concluding questions I'll get into. But Sangbe PA, the fact that he's put on the currency of Sierra Leone means this story of the Amistad Rebellion still inspires people, not just here in the United States, but in Sierra Leone. And I've had many people from Cuba as well tell me they learn about the Amistad Rebellion as well. So you can see the legacy of this story. And I don't want to take too much time on just teaching the story because I have some very helpful tips on how to teach it soon. But any questions about the story before we move on to how best to teach it?
We're using the microphone so that those online can also hear.
Great.
Thank you. Davita Harewood from Montclair High School. My students often ask what happens to these African people when they get back home.
Yes, great question. We know a lot about some of them, not all of them, on what happens. So I'll give you a few stories to highlight some of the different things that happen. So first and foremost, the Amistad Africans, they try to reconnect with their families. Some are successful in doing that. Berna, he's the man who spares Ruiz and Montes on the Amistad ship. He's kind of like third in command. It's not just Sangbe is king of the Amistad Africans. It's a leadership kind of hierarchy where there's multiple people to speak to and multiple members of the Poro Society. Berna, one of the Amistad Africans, when he gets home in 1842 to Freetown, finds his mother and reconnects with other family members from there. So some of the Amistad Africans are successful in reconnecting, return to their villages, return to their homes and their families. Some are not successful. Sangbe is one of those people, unfortunately. While he finds his brother, he is unable to reconnect with his wife and his children. That being said, he is a young man. He does remarry. He stays in contact with the abolitionists that come, the missionaries that come back with the Amistad Africans and set up a mission in Mende land. And so from that, we know that he remarries and has more children. And their direct lineage, their descendants are still around today. And we work with some of them for the programming, like Samuel PA. He immigrated to the United States in the 1970s, and he currently lives in Texas. So we do programming with him. Others, the third one, the children, right? All 4 children survive the entire journey. They all stay at the Christian mission that starts in Sierra Leone because they are not able to reconnect with their parents. Some of them take on new names. Margru, one of the ones we know the most about, she has a very interesting story. So she takes the name Sarah Margru Kinson. She briefly returns to the United States, to Oberlin College, and becomes the first African woman to graduate from college in the United States. She does that because she wants to be a teacher. And she's inspired, like many of you, to teach. And her goal is to teach in Sierra Leone. So after graduating Oberlin, she becomes a teacher back in Sierra Leone. So some we know a lot about, some we don't know much about.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually just introduced to Little Kale over this past week, and his story and the letter that he wrote to John Quincy Adams when he was 13 after being imprisoned here for 2 years. How do you go over that story? Because if you actually read it, he has like critiques like David Walker almost of kind of pointing out the contradiction.
Yes, absolutely. So one of it's not just the abolitionists. So we'll get into Kale through a couple ways. One of the ways is through his advocacy. So we have copies, primary sources I'll hand out including the letter. He has more than one letter, but the main letter from Kale to John Quincy Adams. So John Quincy Adams, for those of you, again, there's so many details to the story. I can't get into every single one, but John Quincy Adams is one of the lawyers for the Amistad Africans. This is his post-presidency. So he is recruited by people like Kale, the one boy, the one male child among the Amistad Africans. He is recruited through these letters by Kale to join the legal team to fight for freedom. So we talk about him that way, but we also talk about him because one of the interesting primary sources you can use is there is a photograph of Kale when he's about 70 years old, still living on that Christian mission in Sierra Leone. So you get a kind of a glimpse of what he looks like in his older years. But I would say the main way we get into Kale is talking about his advocacy, his recruitment. And actually, I use him in one of the activities we're going to get into, saying how the Amistad Africans were their best advocates, their own best advocates. And Kale is a perfect example of that. Yes. Last one, and then I want to show you some
Thank you.
tips.
It's a good transition because I was going to ask you about John Quincy Adams. From your perspective, do you think that the portrayal that they give you in Steven Spielberg's movie about John Quincy Adams is accurate, especially when he goes to the trial, that final statement that he's making?
So I have many critiques of the movie, many things, positive things to say about the movie, and we'll talk about more about that as a teaching tip. But the portrayal of John Quincy Adams is pretty good in the movie. In fact, that speech at the end of the movie, they're taking direct quotes from his speech. They are. John Quincy Adams is one of those people who like to talk a lot. So I think his speech before the Supreme Court is like 7-8 hours. So it is quite long, and there's many excerpts taken from that are directly used in the movie. He's directly talking about the Declaration of Independence and pointing out the contradictions of the Declaration of Independence. Good year to use point out those contradictions, right? How they are advocating for the freedom of all people, yet leaving out the people in front of them right now, the Amistad Africans. So he directly calls out those contradictions. So the movie is a good representation. I will say the one critique I have of the movie, not only the fact that they started at the rebellion, they don't really give you that background that we went into for like the first half of the story I was giving you, but also they focus far more on the trials. John Quincy Adams' role is overplayed in the movie. He's an incredibly important figure. A lot of prestige is brought, and a lot of people pay attention in this trial because they see John Quincy Adams, former president. It's like having, Obama, a trained lawyer, post-presidency, he's now your lawyer, right? That's the kind of prestige it's bringing to the trial. But he only joins for the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court specifically says it's actually the other lawyer, Roger Sherman Baldwin, whose argument was more persuasive. So they just overplay his role a little bit. But everything they have him say is accurate to what he said. All right, so I'm almost out of time, and I know we're going to do the breakout rooms in a minute. So I just want to show you a quick few tips, and then again, for the breakout people that are going to stay here, I'll get more into details. This is that portrait I was talking about. Use primary sources. This is an actual painting of Sengbe PA from 1839. It exists at a museum. We don't own it, unfortunately, but the New Haven Museum in Connecticut. How often do you have a primary source of an enslaved person showing not just words on a page, but imagery? Not only that, but that's painted by an abolitionist. They're making this painting as a tool to recruit people to the abolitionist cause. They are trying to portray him as a shepherd of his flock. So we get into the analysis, the symbolism in all of this, but we also have drawings of almost every single one of the Amistad Africans. While they were jailed in New Haven, William Townsend drew almost every single one of the Amistad Africans. So there's Kale. You mentioned Kale. We have the photograph of him when he's an old man, but this is him as a youth in the jail in New Haven. That's Grabo. That's one of the other Poro Society. That's Mar Group, who I mentioned. This is actually what they look like, and I'll show you the links in my presentation where you can access these. I'm going a little bit quicker because there's a few things I want to show you. This is probably the one that is most useful to people in every age group. We talk about the Amistad, we talk about the Tesoro as one story. The slave trade is thousands and millions of stories. This is an amazing resource for you, teaching not only about the Amistad, but about the slave trade and slavery as a whole. This is slavevoyages.org. One of the many resources they have is this time-lapse map of the international slave trade. They also have one for the domestic slave trade. Let me tell you a little bit more about what you're seeing. You have the year in the top left. So this begins in the 1600s and goes through the end of the 1800s. So we're talking about over 200 years of history. Every single dot is one slave ship. The larger the dot, the more enslaved people. I've seen the numbers on a slave ship go as high as 800 people put on one ship. The color of the dot represents the country. Green is Portugal. Blue is France. Light blue is the United States. Orange is Dutch. Red is Great Britain. Every single one of these dots represents one country. So you can have them analyze where are they coming from? West Africa. Where are they going? Brazil, Caribbean, United States. We're talking about an estimated 12 million people. 12 million people kidnapped from West Africa. That does not count the people who were kidnapped in West Africa and died before they made it onto a slave ship, which is millions of people. We don't know how to estimate how high that number goes. But once they got on a ship, we know that that's around 12 million, and that 1 in 4 of the people that put on a slave ship died. The Middle Passage, because of the Middle Passage, they call the Atlantic the world's largest graveyard. So 12 million people are brought across the Atlantic to all of these different places. The Tesoro is one of those green dots that you see. And you can analyze things like the changes in where these ships are going, the countries that are involved. The last thing I'll show you before I know we got to go to the breakout rooms is just what happens in 1808. I always use this as a transition because that is when the international slave trade is made illegal. So watch as we get to 1808. You see this huge influx to the United States right before it's made illegal. They're trying to get as many people in as they can. And look how different that slave trade looks. But as you fast forward it, all of these ships are now breaking the law. I'll fast forward for time's sake. You can see, though, there's almost just as many ships afterwards as there is before. They're just now all breaking the law. So this is one of your resources, and I know we're going in the breakout rooms now. I will show you more resources, and I'll stick around as you go into your breakout rooms and answer more questions. Yeah. And it's okay if some of you head out. I know you got to go to the breakout rooms.
So we've discovered Egyptian temples underneath the sand. We've discovered dinosaurs all over the world. Where are, over this 200-year period, where are all these preponderance of the slave ships and the wreckage? Have they been scuttled? Have they been burnt? Like where?
There are some. There are some that you can find. I remember, to me, it was a few years ago. I think it probably more like 10. I think they just found one in the Mississippi Delta. One of the last slave ships to ever exist in the 1860s. Yes, so there are some. If you want to see an original slave ship that still exists today, the best one is the International Slave Trade Museum in Liverpool, UK. You can see images of online because I obviously can't do a field trip to the UK, but they have a full one. Actually, they put it inside so it doesn't degrade anymore. They have one there inside that museum so you can see the scale. But what often happens is that once the slave trade is made illegal, same thing that happens to the Amistad, it's used for other reasons. It's used for other purposes. And so they just continued to use them until they degraded and rotted and scrapped for parts. That's why you don't see them around anymore, because they continue to use them for merchant ships afterwards. But there are some. You can find a lot of these still, wreckages, but there are articles about some of those wreckages.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Menapace. We're going to break at this time. Those of you that are in the sessions for pre-K to 3 are going to go to room 207. Those that are in the sessions for grades 4 and 5 are going to rooms 208. And those that are in grades 6 through 12, you get the pleasure of just staying right here. Just staying right here. Okay, so pre-K to 3, we're going to room 207. 4th and 5th are going to room 208. And 6 through 12 had the pleasure of just staying right here. We're going to continue on with Mr. Menapace for our breakout session. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to reconvene because we do have our virtual audience still watching, or some have tuned in for this breakout session. So we're going to continue with grades 6 through 12 with the Discovery Amistad presentation and resources that you can use within your individual classrooms. Yes, I'll use my teacher voice. Okay, ready? We're ready for you.
So I do have more to show you. It's 30 minutes, right? 120. So I do have more to show you on the PowerPoint, and then I have some objects. So I don't know if my computer just went to sleep or yes. So we'll get into more of these teaching tools. So this is my secondary ed, right? Yes. So I have more of these teaching tools available to you that I'll show you, and then I have handouts. But we have a lot to cover, and I'll hopefully get through as much as I can. So again, we talked about dehumanizing. The reason why these tools, these primary sources are so useful is because they are humanizing. Before you dehumanize, you need to humanize. Before you understand oppression, you have to understand what was being taken away from the Amistad Africans, their families, their jobs, their freedom, right? And oftentimes for millions of enslaved people, their faces, right? Their names. And we'll get into that. So we talked about the scale of the slave trade. By the way, I'll put my contact information up at the end. I do have some business cards too. I can send you these. We have a website where you can access all of these resources. But slavevoyages.org has more than just this time-lapse map. They have a more than one three-dimensional tour of different kinds of slave ships. So you can see what it is, more than just the two-dimensional imagery we often see, a three-dimensional computer tour. And we're working on one for the Amistad too. I'll show you the prototype I have, but you'll see why I can't do it. Another big part on why framing the story of slavery and the slave trade is it is a business. The reason why slavery is happening is because people are greedy. Especially when I get into the younger audiences, they'll often ask me, why are they doing this? They want to make money. And they don't care who gets hurt in the process. We all know, in our modern day world, unfortunately, that's how still it works. Is all about greed. If you can make money, someone's going to do it. And that was slavery, even once it's illegal. Because if you do not have to pay your workers, all that money goes to the enslavers. The billionaires of the 1800s are enslavers. There's a reason why so many of the early presidents of the United States are enslavers, because they had the money to run for president, right? One of the few guys who isn't an enslaver in the early period is John Quincy Adams' dad. He's one of the few that isn't an enslaver in the early period. So we talked about dehumanization. It's intentional. They're doing it on purpose, not only to stop rebellions. If you take away someone's humanity, you discourage them. We talk about this with the Holocaust too. We'll get into that. But also a way of justifying slavery. In the 1800s, the way they're